Simon's WLA, bought from Scotland, and it's shipped straight to us. So we've done our checklist as we normally do. New tyres, which he's ordered. Rear wheel needs shimming, which is just in and out. The bearings are okay that way. It's just in and out that way, which is just your shims on your star washer on the other side. Right, brake shackle bushes are gone on the front, which is these in here. When you put your foot on the hand on the brakes, all that's rattling around. The cable's at it, so we'll get another brake cable. The handlebars weren't actually bolted on, look.
Oh dear.
So that needs doing. I think what they've done is taken it apart, because if you look here, that is your that's your steering damper, and it's popped out the groove in the frame. So I think they've taken the handlebars off to try and rectify that, but in reality you have to take the front wheel out and the mudguard out and bash the pin through and then rebuild it. So playing the twist grips, that's normal as such. Headlamp bulb doesn't work. Right, new wiring loom because that was bad. New fuel line because that was completely wrong. Engine runs okay, but it's quite tappety, so we'll strip that and have a look. Clutch and gearbox. Clutch was stuck on. I can't see anything wrong with the clutch. I think it's just the fact that the gearbox needs rebuilding. Seat post bush again. There wasn't a bush in there at all, so when you undid the nut, it went clonk, clonk, clonk. Brake bush and clutch bush on the pedals, again normal. The rear stand's wrong, but I don't think the guy's worried particularly about aesthetics as such. That's the front stand off a UL or a WLC. And his new coil and mounts, which he's said, and wouldn't run on the original carburettor. What's happened is, on a military spec carb, on a normal civvy carb, that's your idle mixture screw, yeah? So that's just on idle, that just sets your mixture to balance it out nice and smooth.
Yeah.
On a civilian carb, you have another one of these in that side,
Yeah.
and that's your high speed adjustment. On a military carb, you have that needle in there, you screw it all the way in, and it locks the bottom off, and you put a jet in the bottom of the carburettor.
Okay.
That thread is completely knackered, absolutely gone. So it doesn't. What they've done is try to thread it down underneath, cut the needle down, and try to grind their own taper on the end of it.
Yeah.
And realistically, that's never ever going to seal or work. So it was just running miles too rich. I put the carburettor off of bends on it just to run it, and it runs okay with that. So we're going to get a new carb for it, which they are horrendously expensive, but it ain't going to work without it.
No.
There's no way you'd get that. You could try and machine that out and make another needle and bits and pieces, but realistically it's never going to be right. It will always break again. Yeah, so the engine's a bit tappety, so we'll get the top end off today. Just take all this out and have a look, see what's going on with it. It could be the valve guides are shot. I think it's more the actual roller blocks, and probably, you know, the wheels on the bottom of those tappet blocks.
Oh right, yeah.
I think they're probably shot, to be honest with you. It's not noisy like Alex's, like cam bearings gone and things like that. It's just a tick, 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 tick you can hear all the time. Other things it could be, until we get the heads off, we don't know. Sometimes if you've got a little head gasket leak, it can sound like a tappet. It's quite a sharp crack noise, you know. But until we get the top end off today, we won't know. We've got to take the wheels out, check the brakes, obviously. But apart from that, I mean, it doesn't need massive amounts doing to it. Stripped the gearbox yesterday, which doesn't seem too bad. Obviously it'll all need shimming up properly, but that was your problem. Your second to third gear shifter fork snapped in half.
Oh dear.
Which is quite common if they're not working, and you can't force one of these gearboxes. If it won't go into gear, the people,
Yeah.
and that's what it does. It just breaks it in half. So, but the general condition of the gearbox looks very good. You know, all your shafts and everything, they're pretty good. Bit of rust damage on that, but it's not worn. It's just brindled, so that'll be fine. Well, that actually isn't the bearing face. That is there. but it all feels okay. You know, nothing major or untoward in any of it. Couldn't get the clutch basket nut undone, so we've stripped it out with that, but it'll be fine. Just got to take the end out of that so you don't, because where your clutch shaft goes through, yeah, through the centre, that is spring loaded in that end for the seal that goes in the centre there for your clutch rod to go through the middle, yeah?
Yeah.
But when you're setting the gearbox up, you need to adjust this to 6 thou, I think it is, off my memory. So you want to take the spring out the back of there, because you have your shim goes on there, yeah? So when you put your outer casing on, you need 6 thou there. But it's very hard to do it with all that spring loaded in the back, so you take that out. All it is just one spring and a cone and a rubber washer. So then go through, measure all your needle rollers, measure all your shims, make sure they are what they should be, and then we can start reassembling until we get another fork. But that's the basic gearbox you can assemble, and then worry about your shifter forks later on, once you've got all your shimming right, and the second and third, first and second gear, which is that should, I think it's 4 or 5 thousandths of an inch against your second gear backstop there, and that was probably 1/8 of an inch, something like that, when you're talking between sort of 3 mil and 0.1 of a mil. So you got to get it shimmed up better than that, but generally all the sort of parts look pretty good. Shifter barrel looks okay, that's a fairly new, the oil bearing, the oil seal's still in there. Nothing too major there, just check out all the roller bearings, make sure they're all the right size. Some of the bearings there are probably too short, which is quite a common thing people do on these. They just get one that's the right diameter but not necessarily the right length,
yeah,
which is pointless, because on either side of that needle roller you've got a shim washer. You have a shim washer there, that side of it, yeah, and then there'll be another shim washer that side of it. But if that needle roller's too short, you might as well not bother putting them in. It's one of those. So you just got to go through it all. Like I say, the Harley book tells you all the dimensions of all the rollers, and all your shims and everything. So you've got to go through it all, make sure it's all correct before you even start assembling it. Set your end float by that shim washer. You get 10 different sizes of those, I think it is. So you get that right first of all, then you build your counter shaft cluster, put that in, make sure you've got some play on that. Yeah, and then the only other shimming operation is between that gear and that gear. He sits on there, that sits on there, yeah, and that will give you your shimming distance. You've got another shim goes in there. Okay, so then you put that all on your main shaft as such. Okay, so that's that. That bit goes on there. I think there's another shim washer on that actually, but you build it all up just with that on, no shifter dogs, nothing. So when you've got your 6 thou end float, first of all, that fits in there, and then whatever you've got there, when it's set at 6 thou this end, yeah, you have to then shim that in the middle of there, between that one and that one, with all different size thicknesses of those. Yeah. But generally that's in pretty good nick.
So back on the bike, is there, what's he wanting to do different and was here?
Okay, change the tyres. He doesn't like the tyres, which is he's supplying those, Simon, so that's good enough. Wants to possibly, on the rear fender, take it off at the hinge, which is there. These aren't his, they're a few holes to fill up on those.
Yeah, just a couple.
So take it off at the hinge, and get what's called a Crocker backlight. Crocker was another American motorcycle. So that's the sort of look he's going for on the rear, yeah? That's a big twin, but it doesn't matter, they're all the same.
Yeah.
So your little pointy out light there. So on the back and the front fender, he wants to shorten down on the front. Oh, there's a better picture than that actually. He wants to shorten it down on the front.
Okay.
But if you look at it where it is, look. If you look at that, what they've done is rolled it round.
Yeah.
So that they've shortened these down. Okay. So you shorten it down, bring it round, and then cut the nose off. But he doesn't want to do it because that's an original fender, so he's going to get a reproduction fender and do it to that.
Okay.
Which makes sense. You can get different risers for them. So where these handlebars go on here, look, they're bolted on there, centre nut, and those two clamp them up, yeah?
Yeah. You
can get these just with a straight piece coming out. No handlebars on them, just a straight piece, then what you call dog bone risers. So you've got a clamp round there, comes up, and a clamp round there for the handlebars, yeah?
Yeah.
And he wants some sort of higher rise bars on it. I've had a look, or we'll have to let him decide what bars he wants, because there's just gazillions of them out there, you know. What I think looks right, he might hate. So you've got to get, realistically, get him to get the bars. But at the moment, as he said, it's all money dependent if we find a horror story in the engine or something, you know, but I don't think we will. It doesn't sound bad enough to me to have anything majorly wrong with it. Yeah, it's be quite a nice bike when it's done, I think. And possibly, again, depending on the money situation, get it repainted because he hates the colour.
And Ben's bike?
Well, I've done all the frame because he didn't like the chrome, so that's all been painted black, frame repainted, everything. I've parkerised everything that I can parkerise, but if it's been chromed, you can't parkerise it. So these have been painted matte black. They're his original fenders, which you can see have got about 1 million holes in them. He wants to keep those, get them painted. He's chosen the colour he wants, which is a Skyway blue Harley colour. Tanks, new transfers for the tanks, get those painted up. He wants to leave the front fender off for the moment. What a lot of people do is just put where your mudguard mounts, just put a leather flap down,
yeah,
a thick leather flap. And he wanted to bob a rear mudguard, which I had a set of 1939 spare wheel covers off a Buick. That's original, sat in the front wings of a Buick, yeah. That's the driver's side. No, left hand side. So that would have been, your front wing comes down, your spare wheel goes in, had Buick written across there and a chrome rings around here.
Yep.
So that was that side. So I'll cut it out just to get the mudguard shape, yeah?
Yeah.
But the radius was wrong. So I had to shrink all these edges down. See the difference in the radius there?
Oh right, yeah.
So the radius was much larger. So I had to shrink it all down, make the rear stays. I quite like the rear stays being straight, but we couldn't do it on this side because it doesn't clear the brake rod. So I've had to kink them like that. Otherwise it clashed with your brake rod when it goes straight up. Machined up the spacers to go in here and the one down the bottom just to hold it all in. Get it down nice and low. Gonna have to mount the number plate here somewhere, because that's the original, which would have just sat on the back of the mudguard there.
Yeah.
So obviously you can't put that up there, it ain't going to do anything. So you're going to have to build something here maybe, who knows, you know?
Is there a legal requirement how big the number plate needs to be?
Yeah, there is, but people don't care. Yeah, you can get little
I've seen those,
tiny ones. Yeah, I don't think people really care too much. Probably if you wanted to get down to the nitty gritty with one of these with an MOT, you'd never pass a brake test because the brakes are bloody terrible. Basically, if everything's operational, the lights work and the horns works, that's about all you need for an MOT on one of these. And a lot of people don't even bother because it's pre-whatever, you know.
1960 something, isn't it?
I'm not sure what it is now.
Going back to the mudguard that you fabricated on there, the clearance that you need between that and tyre.
Only through watching things on the telly and stuff, they use a piece of hose pipe, just standard hose pipe, tape it to the wheel, and then just lay your mudguard on top of it. But I mean, as long as you might get a stone fly up in there and it will rattle around and just spit it out the bottom. So the only trouble with doing this again is you have trouble fitting your chain guards. Now I will ask Ben, I haven't asked him yet. I can build some sort of bracket up here to hold it probably. So I'll ask him whether he wants to actually run the chain guard or not. A lot of people like them just to look open, you know. But the only reason the chain guard is there is if it comes off and it smashes you on the back of the head, you're going to know about it. They don't really do anything as such apart from collect oil and drop shit everywhere. So old, worn out.